Welcome to ATCM, the Emergency Medicine Channel. Today, World HIV Day. So we are discussing about some of the major clinical features of HIV, how to diagnose HIV, how to manage HIV, what are the post-exposure prophylaxis we have to take. All these things we'll discuss now. HIV is a virus which belongs to the family of human retrovirus and subfamily of lentivirus. There are two important types of HIV, HIV-1 and HIV-2. In India, HIV-1 is most common, and all other areas also HIV-1 is very common. But in Western African countries, HIV-2 is very common. The major difference between HIV-1 and 2 is HIV-2, the disease is slow progressing, less aggressive, slow fall in CD4 count, and the transmission also from HIV to AIDS is low. So it's a less aggressive disease. But the treatment and other features are similar. We can see the transmission, how HIV virus transmits from one person to other person. The most important mode of transmission is sexual transmission. More than 75% of the transmission is due to sexual intercourse, unprotected sexual intercourse. But the risk of transmission is only 1%. That means out of 100 exposure, only in one the virus may transmit. But since the number of encounters are very high, the rate of the number of cases is very high. So it can be due to homosexual or heterosexual contacts. Other important risk factor, especially for healthcare providers, it's through the blood and blood products. Blood transfusion can also be a risk factor for HIV transmission, but nowadays, since it is the evaluation of a person who is going for blood transfusion, donor, is very stringent, so that the transmission risk is very low. But in healthcare professionals, like those who are getting needle prick injury, or during surgical procedures, if the contaminated blood splashes on eyes, or if there is a wound, the transmission can occur. Mother to child risk is 0.5 to 1%. Drug abusers risk is 0.2 to 0.5. So the most important factor is always sexual transmission, whether it is homosexual or heterosexual. That is the most important mode of transmission. Now, if you see the pathophysiology, the most important pathophysiology is HIV virus infects CD4 cells that protects our body from infections. The virus can destroy CD4 cells either qualitatively or quantitatively. Qualitative means the quality of CD4 will come down, CD4 cell will come down, or the quantity, the number of CD4 cells will come down. So both qualitative and quantitative reduction of CD4 cells will occur. It leads to low immunity, and when the immunity is very low, patient will develop all sorts of opportunistic infection. Opportunistic infection means these bacteria, virus, fungus, all are there in our body. Since we have a good immunity, they are not affecting us. So when the immunity is low, that can produce various type of infections. That is opportunistic infection. Now we can see the most important investigation what we do to diagnose HIV is HIV antibodies by ELISA test. It's high sensitive test, more than 99% of percent it is sensitive. So no need to do another investigations like Western blot or other tests to make a diagnosis. If you have a strong clinical suspicion, or if you have a exposure, like somebody is having exposure, they can directly go to ICTC center and can do the test. If there is a strong suspicion of infection, and if ELISA is positive, there is no need of any other test to make a diagnosis. So test will be reported as positive or negative, reactive or non-reactive. If we have strong doubt, suppose patient tells I have no exposure, there is no other history, test can be even repeated. So no need to confirm with Western blot. Previous guideline was confirm the ELISA with Western blot. Now you can avoid Western blot. You can do the test, ELISA test. If you want to repeat, another ELISA test can be done. Western blot can be done, but it is not required nowadays. Now, previously Western blot was confirmatory test, but now if you want to confirm the diagnosis, or if the patient tells that he is not believing ELISA test, then another test which is more sensitive, that is HIV RNA PCR. So if you do a ELISA test, if it is negative, if you want to confirm in the window period, you can go for RNA PCR. Remember, RNA PCR has got two important tests. HIV RNA PCR can be done as qualitative and quantitative. Quantitative is otherwise called as viral load. So to make a diagnosis, only qualitative test should be done. So that will be reported as positive or negative. Qualitative will be reported as positive or negative. If we are asking for quantitative test, it will be reported as less than a particular value, like less than 20, or and number like 1 lakh copies or something like that. So quantitative should be done to know the number of viruses. Qualitative should be done to make a diagnosis. That is very, very important. Never ask a quantitative test to make a diagnosis. So HIV RNA PCR qualitative is to know whether the person is infected with virus or not. Quantitative is only after you confirm the diagnosis. Suppose we want to know the number of viruses in the patient's body, we can do quantitative test. This test can be done even in window period. Window period means after getting an infection, there will be some time lag to develop the antibodies in that patient's body. So that period is called as window period. During that period, if you do HIV ELISA or Western blot, it will be negative. So during that period itself, this test can be positive. Within the second week of infection, this test can be positive, whereas ELISA will take some more time. It may become positive only after 1 month. So if you have a doubt in ELISA or Western blot results, also we can do it. In neonates, we can do HIV DNA PCR. So these are the indications, but mainly it is done to confirm the diagnosis. If the patient tells that he is not believing the ELISA test, to confirm the diagnosis, we can do qualitative test. If you want to know what is the amount of virus in that person's body, we have to do quantitative test. Now another important test is CD4 count. Normally we have a CD4 count around 500 to 1200. If it is less than 200, we can tell the patient's immunity is very low. If the count is less than 500, itself the immunity is low, but patient may not develop any opportunistic infection. If the count is less than 200, there is a chance to develop opportunistic infection. We can call it as AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. After getting an infection, every year CD4 count falls by 100 cells per year. So suppose it is 500 at the onset, next year it may become 400, or if it is 1000 at the first year, next year it may fall to 900 or something like that. And the rise also, that increase also will be like that. After starting ART, antiretroviral therapy, it slowly increases. Suppose when the patient is on, like starting, during the starting of ART, if it is 100, by next year it may increase only 200, by 100 only. So it may become 200. That is a maximum. So 100 to 150 cells per year is the increase or decrease in CD4 cells. Now we can see the HIV defining illness, AIDS defining illness. HIV reduces the immunity, so the patient can develop opportunistic infection. Oral hairy leukoplegia, recurrent oropharyngeal fungal infection, that is candidiasis, recurrent vaginal candidiasis, severe pelvic inflammatory disease, bacillary angiomatosis, cervical dysplasia, idiopathic thrombocytopenia, chronic diarrhea, weight loss, herpes zoster, multidermatomal herpes zoster, peripheral neuropathy, low-grade fever, night sweats. These are the most important opportunistic infection or opportunistic infection induced problems what we see in HIV. There are more dangerous diseases you can see, but these are the common infections we see in HIV. But once the patient develops AIDS, there will be another set of opportunistic infection like PCP pneumonia, Toxoplasma gondii, CMV retinitis, lymphomas, all these things you can see. Now there are some drugs which are designed to reduce the multiplication of this virus, antiretroviral virus. We can see here, this diagram explains how these drugs can kill the virus and prevent the multiplication of the virus. But remember, these antiretroviral drugs never is used as a complete cure for HIV. It can only prevent the growth of the virus, but this virus can hide in the patient's body for a long time. If the patient is taking antiretroviral therapy, as long as patient is taking, this virus growth can be prevented. But once the patient stops the drug, or if the virus become resistant to the drug, again regrowth can be seen. Now these are the commonly used drugs for highly active antiretroviral therapy. One class is NRTA, another class is NNRTI, the third class is protease inhibitor, fourth one is integrase inhibitor, integrase strand transfer inhibitor. There is a newer generation drug. So what is a common practice is we give multiple drugs. We can take 2 from NRTs, 1 from either NNRT or from PI or from integrase strand transfer inhibitor. So that is a common therapy. We commonly take 3 drugs, 2 from NRTs, 1 from other groups. So that is a common thing. So we will not be discussing in detail about all the drugs. That is not possible here. We will tell what are the preferred drugs. Now this is a new drug, integrase strand transfer inhibitor, that can be used in all type of patients, whether it is a new patient or a patient already experienced other type of drugs like NNRTA based regime or protease inhibitor based regime. This drug can be started. Now we'll see what is HAART, highly active antiretroviral therapy. That means a combination of 3 drugs. The most preferred NNRTI based regime is efavirenz plus lamivudine or emtricitabine plus sidovudine or tenofovir. That is the most commonly used regime in NNRTI based regimen. Then most preferred protease inhibitor based regime is atezolizumab with ritonavir. Ritonavir is an add-on drug to reduce the dose of atezolizumab plus lamivudine or emtricitabine plus sidovudine plus tenofovir. So 2 drugs from NRTIs, 1 drug from NNRTI or PI. That is very important. You can see here. The other drug, this is a newer type of regimen. Here also we are using 2 drugs from first group, that is lamivudine plus tenofovir. The most useful or most preferred INSTI-based regime, that is dolutegravir 50 milligram OD. So dolutegravir 50 milligram OD plus lamivudine and tenofovir. So we have given the doses of all drugs in previous chart, chart number 10 or slide number 10. You can go back and refer. So we will not be repeating all the drugs here. So the most preferred regime nowadays is dolutegravir 50 milligram once daily plus lamivudine plus tenofovir. That is the best regime available nowadays. We can also go for alternative regimes if the patient does not tolerate this regime, or if there is a side effect or patient cannot take some of these drugs, we can go for alternative therapy. Now, if suppose a healthcare provider get a needle prick or surgical wound during any procedure, we should advise that person to take a baseline HIV test, so that we know this person is not infected prior to starting ART. So take a baseline HIV ELISA test. Start post-exposure prophylaxis as soon as possible. This regime can also be taken for sexual contact, unprotected sexual contact also. We can advise this regime. So tenofovir with dolutegravir, that is enough. Tenofovir 300 milligram plus dolutegravir 50 milligram can be started. If the wound is severe, then emtricitabine can be started. So tenofovir with dolutegravir should be started within first 72 hours. So first 3 days we can have some delay, but it is better to start the drug as soon as possible, the injury or unprotected sexual contact. So that is post-exposure prophylaxis. This drug should be continued for 30 days. 1 month it should be continued. After 30 days, we can go for HIV RNA PCR qualitative to know whether a person is infected or not, or go for ELISA test. ELISA test is not a good investigation during this type of patient. RNA PCR will be better investigation, but if resources are not there, we can go for ELISA, and after 6 months also we have to take the ELISA. If a pregnant lady come with HIV positivity, the ideal drug of choice will be nowadays tenofovir, emtricitabine and dolutegravir. So that is the same drug we have discussed, but previously we used to go for other regimes, but nowadays the same regime can be continued. And during pregnancy, sidovudine should be started 14th week of gestation if patient is not taking any other drug. During labor, sidovudine 2 mg per kg over first hour, followed by maintenance dose of 1 mg per kg per hour until the delivery. For baby, sidovudine syrup 2 mg per kg orally 4 times a day for 6 weeks. Nevirapine single dose, nevirapine 400 mg for mother and single dose for child soon after birth 2 mg per kg can be given. But all these things are given if the patient is not on any therapy, except for the last part nevirapine. We can use the dolutegravir based regime in any patient nowadays. Now, depending on the stage of the disease, we can have a lot of opportunistic infection. That early symptomatic disease, patient can have fever, unexplained weight loss, seborrheic dermatitis, oral candidiasis, herpes zoster, pneumonia, TB. Late symptomatic disease like 50 to 200, opportunistic infection and malignancy, esophageal candidiasis, toxoplasma encephalitis, pneumocystis carinii pneumonia, Kaposi sarcoma, lymphoma. In advanced disease like if the CD4 count is less than 50, cytomegalovirus retinitis, cryptococcal meningitis, Mycobacterium avium complex, histoplasmosis, progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy, AIDS dementia, CNS lymphoma, AIDS wasting syndrome. All these things are some of the opportunistic infection you can see in AIDS. But what we have seen previously was HIV defining illness. This is AIDS defining illness. But both can be coexisting in same patient. This type of infection can be there in some patients with higher CD4 count also, because we know that the quantitative and qualitative reduction of CD4 cells can produce AIDS, and AIDS defining illness also can be there in even slightly higher CD4 count. Now we will discuss about pneumocystis carinii pneumonia or pneumocystis jirovecii pneumonia. These patients present with acutely to emergency room with severe breathlessness. There may be minimal clinical findings, but the patient will be severely breathless. Patient can have ABG findings of severe type 1 respiratory failure in initial phase. Then it will become type 2 respiratory failure. X-ray may show normal finding initially, but afterwards bilateral extensive infiltration can be there. The treatment for this is Bactrim, that is trimethoprim with sulfamethoxazole. So there is a commonly available drug, sulfa drug, that is Bactrim or Septran. You have to give DS tablet, Septran DS, 2 TID. So it's very high dose comparing with the normal infection like urinary tract infection. We give the same drug, but that is 1 TID. This is 2 TID with folic acid. It's an anti-folate drug, so folic acid should be given. So 2 that is a dose. Folic acid can be given. If the patient is having sulfa allergy, then alternatively clindamycin can be started. So clindamycin, but remember, if the patient is having severe breathlessness, hypoxemia, better to start on prednisolone. So start 1 to 2 milligram per kg body weight. Vicelon like 40 milligram or 60 milligram per day can be started. Slowly taper down. So steroid should be continued for nearly 21 days. So Bactrim DS also should be continued for 21 days. After completion of the treatment, secondary prophylaxis can be given. Trimethoprim, sulfamethoxazole once daily should be continued. So primary prophylaxis, if CD4 count less than 200, patient does not have any PCP finding, we can start again Bactrim DS once daily, and it should be continued if the CD4 count is more than 200 for nearly 3 months. If persistent CD4 count elevation, then we can discontinue this drug. Now HIV TB is another important problem when we manage HIV cases. Any patient who is having tuberculosis, diagnosed tuberculosis, there may be some problem in diagnosing, because HIV and tuberculosis patient can have bilateral infiltration, extensive infiltration. Normally patient can have upper lobe tuberculosis, but this patient can have lower lobe TB, bilateral TB, and miliary type of TB. Sputum may be negative for this one. Lymph nodes may or may not be seen. Non-caseating lymph nodes can be seen. So many type of abnormal presentation can be there in HIV. But whatever it is, once we make a diagnosis, it's same like treatment is same like any other patient. INH, rifampicin, ethambutol, pyrazinamide is the treatment of choice. INH 5 mg per kg body weight, rifampicin 10 mg per kg body weight. In this slide, is slightly wrong thing is given. 1 milligram is given, sorry. 10 mg per kg body weight, ethambutol 15 mg per kg body weight, pyrazinamide 25 mg per kg body weight. That should be continued for 2 months. Then INH and rifampicin for another 4 months. That is a usual treatment for any patient. Here also you should give like that. Only important thing is when the patient is having first time TB, if the patient has not started on ART, first treat tuberculosis for at least 2 to 3 weeks. If the patient symptomatically improves, then only we should start antiretroviral therapy. If we don't start like that, if we start first antiretroviral therapy, the immunity increases and patient develops immune mediated reaction, that is called as immune reconstitution inflammatory syndrome. This occurs when the patient is having TB which is not diagnosed, and if we start ART, patient's immunity increases and the patient can develop severe reactions like lymph nodes will become large, patient can have more symptoms like cough, breathlessness and fever. That can be avoided if we avoid treating this patient initially with ART. Start ATT first, then ART. The patient develops iris, then give steroids. Steroids are the drug of choice there. Now, Mycobacterium avium complex is another type of infection. If the CD4 count is less than 50, it's a type of tuberculosis, but it is a different type of bacteria, Mycobacterium avium complex. They can have bilateral infiltrates, they can have multiple lymph nodes. So, you can take lymph node biopsy from the cervical area, but classically it occurs in the lungs. So, if the CD4 count is less and if a patient is not responding to ATT, most of the time it can be Mycobacterium avium complex. The treatment is azithromycin 500 mg once daily plus ethambutol 15 mg per kg per day plus rifampicin or ciprofloxacin. So, if once we start it, the treatment should be continued till the CD4 count will become more than 100. So, remember, if the patient is having an opportunistic infection, first try to treat the opportunistic infection. Then once the patient is stabilized only, we start ART, antiretroviral therapy. Another important opportunistic infection is Cryptococcus meningitis. Cryptococcus meningitis, patient present with meningitis. So we can do an LP, MRI with contrast. India ink preparation can be done. The CSF India ink preparation can be positive in CSF or cryptococcal antigen can be positive. Treatment is amphotericin B. 0.7 mg per kg per day is the treatment. And once the patient improves, we can switch to fluconazole. So this can be started in emergency room, amphotericin. So if the patient is having meningitis in HIV, there are multiple possibilities. One of the possibilities, cryptococcal meningitis. Now, cerebral toxoplasmosis, you can get a ring-enhanced lesion in the brain. Multiple ring-enhancing lesion can be there in the brain. It can be, a patient can have edema surrounding the lesion. Lymphoma also can present like this. TB also can present like this. So, we can do an LP and find out whether anything which can tell this toxoplasma or not. So, we'll not be discussing in detail about the investigation here. Another class we can discuss about that. The treatment is again sulfadiazine pyrimethamine. A Fansidar tablet will be available, or if that is not available, we can go for again clindamycin or simple Bactrim DS also can be started. Colibitor is one drug which can be which is same as Bactrim DS, but it is available as an injection, so that can be tried. Clindamycin IV can also be given. Dexamethasone should be given to reduce the edema. So that can be given in cerebral toxoplasmosis. HIV related enteropathy, that is diarrhea without any other infection in a patient who is having HIV, octreotide should be tried. 50 microgram subcutaneous BD can be given. Another important problem is oral candidiasis. Here fluconazole can be tried. Slightly higher dose is required. 200 to 800 mg per day should be given. Itraconazole can be given. Esophagitis, again fluconazole can be given. Posaconazole also given. So various type of antifungals can be tried in patients who is having this type of infection, including candidiasis. CMV retinitis is one of the important thing. If the CD4 count is very low, less than 100, we should always send this patient for ophthalmological evaluation. So if a patient is having CMV retinitis, if we start ART, again there also immune reconstitution syndrome can occur, severe reaction can occur, patient can lose his vision. So better to send this patient initially itself for ophthalmological evaluation. And if there is some doubt of CMV retinitis, ganciclovir is the treatment. It should be given for 3 weeks. Valganciclovir 900 mg oral BD for 3 weeks is alternative. Now, another important problem in HIV is lymphoma. This patient can present to emergency room with acute seizures. So when we take MRI or CT scan, there will be multiple ring enhancing lesions with surrounding edema. It can be lymphoma, it can be toxoplasma, it can be tuberculosis, or various infection can occur. So LP, lumbar puncture, can be done. We can, if suppose there is peripheral lymph nodes, we can take a biopsy and see what type of problems are occurring in the lymph nodes. So these are the common problems which can be seen in HIV infection. We have discussed in detail about HIV, how to manage, how to diagnose, what are the complications. All these features we have discussed in detail. Now we will discuss some of the cases. They come with acute presentation to emergency medicine department. We can see how we have managed this case. Okay.
Today we will be having a case discussion of a HIV patient presenting with acute onset breathlessness to ER. Okay. So a 55-year-old male patient, a recently diagnosed case of retroviral infection, presented to ER in a gasping state with a supplemental oxygen about 10 liter via face mask, which was started from outside. Okay. So he was so we checked for the central pulse. It was palpable, and he was immediately triaged to the red area. And in view of the gasping state, we have planned for a intubation. Okay. His by the time we went ahead with the primary assessment, a quick primary assessment, and the intubation was also arranged side by side. So his airway was compromised. He was taking gasping breath. His breathing wise, he had decreased air entry on the right side with inadequate chest excursions, with crepitations present bilaterally, and he was maintaining a saturation of 92% with a 10 liter O2 via face mask that was already started from outside. Okay. Coming to his circulation, he was having a blood pressure of 110 over 80 millimeters of mercury and a heart rate of 128 per minute.
If a patient with HIV come with hypotension, since you told about BP, I'm asking, what will be a differential diagnosis?
It can be because of dehydration.
Dehydration, sepsis, all these things, routine cases.
Then any TB or related adrenal hypocortisol.
Most important, insufficiency. Adrenalitis. It can be due to TB, it can be due to HIV. These things should be kept in mind. Okay.
So this patient had a BP of 110 over 70 and a heart rate of 128 per minute, regular in rhythm, in our defibrillator which was connected to the patient. And patient's disability, in view of the low GCS and gasping, we had checked for a GRBS which was 108 milligram per deciliter. And by the time...
Low GCS is due to what? What is the reason for low GCS?
Sir, one, he is having hypoxia. Maybe he might be having we don't know his current ABG status. Maybe low respiratory excursions. He might be having a PCO2 retention causing a.
But you have to always think about CNS causes in a case like this. Okay.
We had by the time since he was in gasping, we went ahead with the intubation. Okay.
So you have to be very careful when you are intubating in a retrovirus case. You should be very careful in personal protective equipment. Anyway, due to COVID, we are taking extra care. But in HIV, all cases come to ER. Those who requiring emergency procedure should be considered as an infective case, especially. We don't know what is the status of the patient, whether it is HIV, hepatitis B. So, you should be very careful.
So, in this patient, we had gone with RSI. The drugs selected was etomidate and rocuronium. We had gone with the intubation. ET tube of size 8 was used for intubating the patient. And it was attempted, in a single attempt, we had successfully run the intubation, and he was connected to a mechanical ventilator. So by the time since he had crepitations with the slightly reduced air entry on the right side, we had also done a bedside lung ultrasound to rule out any other pneumothorax or anything. All these was happening parallelly, simultaneously. So the bedside lung ultrasound was showing bilateral B lines with reduced lung sliding on the right side and minimal effusion. But there was no absent lung sliding, but the lung sliding was reduced on the right side and only minimal effusion. So we had also asked for a chest X-ray, portable chest X-ray. By the time we also got the arterial blood gas done. So like the ABG finding was like we got was after the.
What are the limitations of portable X-ray in emergency room? Whatever may be the case, limitations I am asking.
One is we'll be the patient will not be getting an erect posture.
So the area which we are seeing will be reduced.
Then the mostly the exposure and all the quality will be
reduced
compromised.
And heart will be enlarged. And one of the important thing is, once you already told that pleural effusion is there, X-ray may show throughout the side white lesions. So that will produce some difficulty when you are reading X-ray when there is pleural effusion.
The X-ray was asked for, and in this patient, the X-ray showed right side homogeneous opacity in the lower zone, and since only minimal effusion was there in the ultrasound, it can be a collapse or a consolidation. So the ABG was showing a pH of 7.3 with a PCO2 of 40, a bicarb of 19.2, and the PO2 was 75.7. And
does it tell anything, ABG?
This was done during the process of intubation. So even then he is having like a 75.7 is a PO2 with around a FiO2 of 15 liter of oxygen was used for ambuing. So with that much oxygen, like PO2 is 75. So he's having some hypoxia is also there.
What are the important respiratory diseases in HIV which can come to ER? There are a lot of diseases patient can have slowly progressing diseases. ER, what is the most important disease and how do you rule out that?
One common thing is TB.
TB is not, see, one thing you should understand, TB is a chronic disease, whether it is in HIV or whatever it is. But acute presentations are different. TB is a subacute or chronic.
Then a PCP
PCP
pneumonia.
is the most important thing. How do you diagnose? PCP means what?
PCP is pneumocystis carinii pneumonia. It has been renamed as pneumocystis jirovecii. So it is basically the pneumonia. It will be acute onset and patient will be very much symptomatic and patient will have significant hypoxia. And the findings will be like the ABG will be showing a significant hypoxia. Chest X-ray will be showing bilateral infiltrates. And if we are going for a CT chest, it will be showing reticular pattern with some ground glassing and all.
More symptoms than signs. That is more in favor of PCP. Whereas in other conditions like TB, you told more findings than symptoms. They are less symptomatic, but this PCP is always highly symptomatic.
TB can be mostly a reactivation of a latent TB, or it can be like a new disease. So
how do TB different from a normal person to HIV person?
In HIV person, the typical presentations may not be there.
What is a typical presentation of TB?
Night sweats, fever.
This typical presentation means in lungs.
Lymph nodes and
upper lobe cavitator lesion is a typical presentation of TB in any other patient or some lymph nodes. But whereas in HIV,
it can be lower
it is in
lobe,
the lower lobe multilobular lesions. So that we should be very careful. Very rarely extensive lesions can be there like this patient.
And sometimes miliary TB and all can also be there.
So one is TB, one is PCP you told. Then
fungal pneumonia.
Fungal pneumonia is very common you can get. Then other things?
Mycobacterium avium complex.
Mycobacterium avium complex, if CD4 count is less than 50. Then
any bacterial pneumonia can
so that is very important. HIV patient can admit with any infection like streptococcus, staphylococcus, pseudomonas, anything is possible. So we should keep all these things in mind and treat the patient.
Then other things are maybe some atypical pneumonias. Then the cytomegalovirus. Then
rarely cytomegalovirus can.
Then even the herpes and all can cause pneumonia. So these are like very rarely seen.
Herpes you told, how do herpes present in HIV? It is not You are talking about varicella or herpes?
The
Chickenpox
pneumonia, the pneumonia.
Chickenpox can present with pneumonia. Herpes zoster?
Herpes zoster will be like more painful.
It will be multi-dermatomal. Okay.
This is the basic differential diagnosis.
Okay.
So we have a patient recently diagnosed with a retroviral infection, now coming to ER in a gasping state because of respiratory distress, electively intubated in view of the respiratory
So now you have to
distress.
ask the patient bystander whether the patient is started on ART or not.
This patient coming to the ample history, patient previously had no allergies or no medical comorbidities. Around 3 weeks back, the patient was admitted in a hospital for complaints of intermittent episodes of fever and easy fatigueness. And there he was evaluated and found to have hyponatremia of sodium of 125 and also elevated ESR. And there they evaluated and found that his HIV serology was positive. So he was referred to a higher center and was
So he was not started on ART.
He was started on ART.
He was started on ART. Then what is the differential diagnosis you have? Somebody started on ART and coming with acute respiratory problem. Started ART 1 or 2 weeks back.
It can be like immune reconstitution.
Immune reconstitution. What is immune reconstitution?
Basically, when we start, like a patient, HIV patient will be immunocompromised.
Yes.
Their CD4 counts, everything will be low. When we are starting on ART, initially the CD4 plus T lymphocyte level will increase, so that the immune level will increase, and all the latent infections or any infection will have a more vigorous presentation.
The reaction against that infection by body will suddenly increase. The patient will have more symptoms like they can have pneumonia, fever, lymphadenopathy, compressive lesions can occur. Okay.
This patient was then started on ART. So it was like around 2 weeks before coming here, he was started on ART. He was started on ART from outside hospital, and also there.
What are the drugs started?
Tenofovir, lamivudine, and dolutegravir.
Okay, so tenofovir, lamivudine, dolutegravir. Only you should be very careful about dolutegravir, because when the patient is on dolutegravir, if you are starting ATT for this patient, dolutegravir dose should be higher. Dolutegravir dose should be higher.
Rifampicin has an interaction.
Okay, that's all we should remember, because otherwise nothing major. We should not change the regime. Any alteration in metabolism can occur due to these drugs like tenofovir and lamivudine in ICU, which may produce some confusion in you.
Basically, the fat, everything will be like
ICU like parameters.
Creatinine, everything will be lower side.
Most important is lactic acidosis. Tenofovir and lamivudine can produce some amount of lactic acidosis. So that we should be very careful, because when you are taking ABG, you can see lactates are high. If there is no reason for high lactate, then that should be attributed to this medicine, and you should continue the medicine.
From that hospital, he was started on ATT, and also his hyponatremia, everything was corrected, and from there he was also started on prophylaxis for PCP pneumonia, Septran double strength, that is trimethoprim combination double strength tablet was given for him, and he was also started on fluconazole from there in view of oral candidiasis.
So what will be the dose of fluconazole?
400 stat followed by 200 OD was
normal adult. We give 150 milligram, 100 milligram, but by HIV patients we have to give a higher dose, 400 milligram to be started.
Then after that, suddenly he developed a desaturation and breathlessness in the hospital, and he was referred here. Here he came in a gasping state. From our preliminary investigations, he has a right-sided, maybe a collapse consolidation, because in view of the homogeneous opacity with a minimal effusion, and the ABG, everything was showing a hypoxia, and we send the routine blood investigations, which showed a total count of 13,000 with a CRP of 121 and platelets of 1,53,000. The procalcitonin was 1.74. And the sodium was 128, potassium 3.8. His urea creatinine was within the normal limit.
What is the importance of potassium in this type of patients? Any importance? Amphotericin is one drug we may start in this patient. Like he is having respiratory infection. Amphotericin can produce some amount of hypokalemia. So we should be very careful when we are dealing with such patients with hypokalemia, because amphotericin can aggravate the problem.
Then his other RFT was within normal limit. His liver function SGOT SGPT was slightly on the higher side, 63 and 47.
Okay. Alkaline phosphatase
was 223.
So any importance for that? SGOT SGPT is slightly elevated. Alkaline phosphatase is slightly elevated. It is not more than threefold elevation, but slightly elevated. What can occur in this type of patient? SGOT SGPT is marginally elevated. Alkaline phosphatase is more than 300. What will you suspect?
It
can be due to granulomatous hepatitis, tubercular hepatitis. Okay.
And we have to be careful while starting the ETT drugs also.
Okay.
Then other thing, this was a basic lab parameters we have sent for, and we have admitted the patient to a ICU, and we had started the patient on PCP treatment, PCP treatment. So
what is the treatment of PCP?
It is a combination of trimethoprim and sulfamethoxazole. So the trimethoprim component should be 2 mg per kg dose. So we get in vials combination.
We can either give oral tablets like Bactrim DS222 you can start, or you can give IV Colibitor. That is a brand available in our hospital, but there are multiple brands may be available.
So we can give 2 vials, we mix it with the dextrose and give it as a infusion. So that is a treatment for PCP.
So will you start steroid for this patient?
This patient, the diagnosis of PCP is not confirmed, and also there is a high chance of it being TB. So in view of that, steroid was withheld for the time.
If you are thinking about immune reconstitution syndrome,
treatment is steroids.
Add steroids. If it is PCP also in hypoxemia, steroid should be started. Only if it is a proven TB without immune reconstitution syndrome, you should avoid this one.
So in this patient, we had also sent for his CD4 counts. Then we had planned for since he was on ventilator, an immediate CT was not taken. So we planned for a bedside bronchoscopy, and we had sent for the gene expert and other cultures, AFP smear, everything. So this patient's gene expert for TB had come to be positive.
What is the importance of gene expert?
It's a PCR test, and it's we'll get a fast result.
One is fast result. Second one is
rifampicin resistance
also will tell. It will tell the resistance, especially to rifampicin. Okay, so that is very important.
So this patient had a TB from the gene expert. It was proven. So the patient was shifted to an isolation area and was started on ATT.
Okay, how do you start ATT in this patient?
This patient
should we start ART first or ATT first?
This patient is already on ART, so there is not much issue in continuing the ART, and we can start the ATT. If ART is not started, maybe after 2 weeks of ATT, we can start on ART. Earlier, the idea was to complete the course of ATT, then ART, but now it has been changed. That maybe after 2 weeks, we can start on ART. If it is since it is a pulmonary TB.
Okay. ATT, how to start? What are the drugs you use in this?
We can start on the initial intensive phase, the INH, rifampicin, ethambutol, and pyrazinamide.
Okay.
So that can be started, and we have to monitor for the patient's LFT.
LFT, okay.
And the patient should also be supplemented with a pyridoxine.
Okay. So what happened to this patient ultimately?
This patient, so he started on ATT, and he is still on ventilator, and planning for other weaning process and all. But he has hypoxia and other.
How long you have to continue ATT?
We have an intensive phase and then a continuation phase. So continuation phase maybe for 6 to 12 months it will continue.
So it is normally 2 plus 4, 2 months intensive and 4 months 2 drug regime. That is enough. Any patient, including HIV, that is more than enough. Anything else you want to add? You want to add in this patient?
And antifungal, prophylactic antifungal should also be started.
Okay.
Because
He's got oral candidiasis. He can develop
other
infections. Okay.
Then we
you want to send for a retinal examination?
Yes, sir. Okay. Basically, one thing is to rule out any choroid tubercles or anything related with TB. Then we can also rule out any other infection.
CMV retinitis is very infection. Important. What is the CD4 count of this patient? 6. So it will take how many months it will take to improve to normal? Normal is 200. Means normal level is 500, but to avoid opportunistic infection 200.
Only after like maybe 3 months only we should check the repeat CD4.
It may take 2 years to improve to 200. From 6 to 200, it may take 100 cells per year only will increase. So it is not our duty to see what happens to the CD4 count. After 3 weeks, after starting ART, after 3 weeks, you can send for a viral load. That is enough, not CD4 count. Okay.
Basically this was the thing, like a patient with acute respiratory
so in emergency room, the major thing is don't stop ART if the patient is on ART. Think about PCP pneumonia when the patient come with acute respiratory syndrome. But however, TB should be ruled out. Can it be Mycobacterium avium complex?
But it should be grown in the culture, but the culture will take a longer time.
So when it is less than 50, you should also keep in mind that Mycobacterium avium complex. What will be the add-on drug in this patient? Mycobacterium avium complex.
It is like azithromycin.
So you can add azithromycin in acute phase. You can add azithromycin. Okay. Thank you.
So we will discuss about another patient who presented to our ER with a complication of HIV. Okay. A 31-year-old male patient who is a known case of HIV infection presented to our ER with complaints of headache since the last 3 weeks. Initial 10-second assessment, patient was conscious oriented and obeying commands, and he was answering in one full sentence. So with personal protective equipments, I approached the patient. I used double gloves with a face shield and that can cover the eyes, and a cap and a gown and a shoe cover.
Suppose during any procedure you get a needle prick injury or you are exposed to some blood.
Yes.
What do you do?
Yes, sir. So, if we are getting a needle prick injury and if the patient is already a known case of HIV, first we should do our baseline serology status.
So first of all, you should know what is the risk of needle prick injury. Yes. What is the risk? 0.03 is the risk. But again, you should remember that when there is a bored needle, like you are putting an IV line, large bore, it contains large amount of blood. Yes. That needle prick injury is more dangerous than a suturing needle, because suturing needle does not contain any blood. So suturing injury is less severe than a IV line injury. Okay, so that we should know about that. Okay.
Then after that we should thoroughly wash the hands. Then we should do the baseline serology status. Then
first of all, universal protection is very, very important. Whether it is HIV patient, hepatitis B patient, or any new patient, we don't know the status. Yes. Okay.
Then after that, after doing the baseline serology, then we can start on the post-exposure.
Why you are doing your baseline serology when you are getting a needle prick injury?
Whether to compare with the next results.
No, you want to know whether, see, we are working in a field where all HIV, hepatitis B, everything is there. We can develop all these things without our notice also. Yes. So before starting ART, we should know whether we are already positive or we are negative. So you want to prove that you are negative. Yes. If you are negative only, you should start post-exposure prophylaxis. If the person is already positive, then it is treatment is important. We should not stop the drug after 30 days. So whatever it is, you start ART once you get a needle prick injury after counseling. So the person should be counseled properly, because they will have a lot of mental trauma after getting a needle prick injury. So counseling is very, very important.
Then tetanus injection should be taken. Then we can start on 1 month post-exposure prophylaxis. Okay. We can start on tenofovir, lamivudine and dolutegravir. Okay. Tenofovir 300, lamivudine 50 and dolutegravir 300 mg for 4 weeks. Okay. Then after that we can repeat a HIV ELISA test. Okay. 4 weeks. Then after 2 months and 6 months we can repeat.
Okay. So what is the difference between ELISA and PCR test?
Yes, sir. So when we are doing this, ELISA will be telling a qualitative result, and sometimes
ELISA will tell you that whether you are positive or negative. So that is around 99.8% sensitive. Okay, so no need to do another test. ELISA is positive, means most of the time it is positive. But what is the disadvantage of ELISA?
In the window period, it will not pick up, and sometimes if the patient's pre-op serology comes positive and ELISA comes negative, then that time you will have to do this HIV PCR test should be done.
What is that PCR test?
PCR is basically a qualitative test. Then quantitative also we can do, that will tell us the viral load also.
Quantitative should be done only in a diagnosed case. We should ask HIV PCR qualitative. So that is to diagnose the case. Other one is to manage the case. Okay, both are HIV RNA PCR. One is qualitative, one is quantitative. That is the main difference. Okay.
So I approached the patient with personal protective equipment, and then went into the primary survey. Airway was patent. There was no pooling of the secretion. There was no gurgling or hoarseness. Breathing respiratory rate was 18 per minute with a saturation of 98%, and bilateral air entry was equal. There was no added sounds, and chest exertions were normal. Circulation, his heart rate was 84 per minute with a blood pressure of 120/80 and MAP of 93. All peripheral pulses were felt equally and bilaterally. Disability, his GCS was 15/15 with pupils 2 mm reactive, and pain score was 8 on 10. His GRBS was 120 milligram per deciliter, and hypothermia was prevented by blanket. So adjuncts to primary survey, at this point of time we will have to address the pain of this patient. So he was given 1 gram paracetamol was given after inserting a cannula with double gloves. So ample history, there is no allergies. Patient 10 months back, patient noticed a cervical lymph node for which he was evaluated, and that time for a biopsy they did a pre-op serology testing which came to be positive for HIV, and then they did an HIV ELISA that was also positive, and CD4 count was done which was only 15. Then they started him on, they didn't start on ART. He was.
What was the Gene Expert result that time?
It was positive.
Gene Expert tells you that it is Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and it is resistant to rifampicin or not resistant. One important thing is when the CD4 count is less than 50, when somebody is having lymphadenopathy, what are the differential diagnoses?
That means patient is in severe immunocompromised state.
That is okay. But what is the differential diagnosis for?
Lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
One is non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Then
TB.
Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Third one? Mycobacterium avium complex. So that is very, very important, because if Gene Expert is not done, then you can miss Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and sometimes that can be Mycobacterium avium complex. We may add to to the regime, we may have to add azithromycin. So if we don't add azithromycin, the patient may not respond.
So that time his ART was not started, and he was started on anti-tubercular drugs, and after that he developed hepatitis. His SGOT, SGPT elevated, and they stopped pyrazinamide. Then he was continued on, and then after that he developed hearing loss also. So streptomycin also they had to stop. So he was continued on ethambutol, and ofloxacin was continued.
But what are the problems of ethambutol? See, that time it was only lymph node. Now he has come with some other problem, neck stiffness, neck pain, headache and all. So what are the problems of ofloxacin and ethambutol regime in this type of patients? Lymph nodes it is okay. Lymph node 3-drug regime is enough for TB. In that you can put rifampicin is a must in all the regimes, and you can put rifampicin, INH and ethambutol or pyrazinamide. But here the patient has come with a problem in the brain. That we'll discuss in detail. But what is the problem of ofloxacin and ethambutol?
Fluoroquinolones can cause seizures. So if he is having some brain lesions and all, that can precipitate.
Problem is not that. That is okay. That's a problem. That's a side effect. But the problem is these drugs are not going to act in the brain. If TB meningitis develops, these drugs will not cover. The drugs which penetrate brain are TB drugs.
Pyrazinamide, INH,
streptomycin, INH, and rifampicin should be there. So these are the major drugs which will penetrate the inflamed meninges. So meningitis means this drug should be there. If drugs are not there, then the recovery is very, very delayed. That we should keep in mind.
Then later he was started on ART was also started. Now he presented with complaints of headache since last 3 weeks. In the frontal headache radiating to the cervical region and upper back.
Okay.
There was no associated fever, nausea, vomiting, photophobia. There is no sensory deficits, hearing loss, and ear discharge or anything. There is no other symptoms like abdomen pain, vomiting, loose stools, difficulty in walking, bowel and bladder incontinence were absent. So this was a history, sir. So we went ahead with the examination. Head to foot examination was done. So head to foot we checked for temporal region wasting. We will have to see any skin lesions, oral candidiasis, then lymphadenopathy was checked, sir. It was absent for this patient. Then but next
this is the area where you can use ultrasound, because one area in HIV we can use ultrasound is in lymphadenopathy, because routine examination will not pick up most of the lymph nodes in many of these patients. So there you have to use ultrasound neck, ultrasound axilla, groin and all. Okay.
He had a neck stiffness, sir. Other than that, all systemic examination was within normal limits, sir. So, he is a diagnosed case of TB, lymphadenitis, and HIV. So, we have to think about something involving
the brain. Is it HIV or AIDS? HIV is a virus.
Yes.
This stage is called as HIV or AIDS?
Actually, now he is in AIDS.
AIDS means what?
The immunity has reduced and it is causing opportunistic infection.
Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome produced by HIV and the CD4 count has fallen less than 200. That is AIDS.
Yes. So we went ahead with a brain imaging, sir. So
what imaging you want to do in this patient? What is in your mind? What do you want to rule out?
So MRI brain with contrast we are planning.
Why
to
not
do.
CT scan?
CT can rule out some ring enhancing lesions and all.
So
can
CT
be seen.
plane you take. Will it help in your case? CT plane?
Before doing LP we can rule out a bleed, SH and all.
Okay. Suppose you want to see brain edema and do LP, CT will be helpful.
Yes.
Otherwise, will CT helpful in this type of patients?
Ring enhancing lesions and
edema. Can plain CT pick up ring? It will not pick up. So either you go for a CT contrast or MRI contrast. In this type of cases, CT contrast or MRI contrast, which is helpful?
MRI, soft tissue lesions can be.
Not only soft tissue, it is we are suspecting a lesion in the posterior cranial fossa. Yes. Posterior cranial fossa lesions, CT is not a good investigation. It can pick up some amount of meningitis, but minimal meningitis, cranial nerve involvement cannot be picked up by CT with contrast. So here we go for a MRI with contrast. Creatinine is normal?
Yes.
Okay.
So MRI brain with contrast was done. So at that time, in our mind, we had a different infection. It can be a TB meningitis, or it can be a since he is having lymph nodes, it can be a non-Hodgkin's lymphomas of the brain associated with HIV, or it can be a toxoplasmosis or a cryptococcal infection can be seen as ring enhancing lesions. So
cryptococcal is meningitis, toxoplasma is ring enhancing. TB can present with both meningitis and ring enhancing lesions. Lymphoma can present with ring enhancing lesions.
Or any fungal brain abscess or fungal infection.
Any infection can occur and you get all opportunistic infection. TB also can be there. TB is an opportunistic infection or just infection?
It is there in everybody, but it will react.
TB is an infection. It can affect any person. Yes. TB in HIV patient are two. Major difference is two. One, in a normal HIV patient present like any other normal person. In a patient who is having low CD4 count, it present in a different way. That's all. So TB is not an opportunistic infection, but whereas toxoplasma, cryptococcus, all these things are CMV. All these things are opportunistic infection. What do you mean by opportunistic infection?
When the immunity reduces, these infection will start manifesting.
Okay, these infections are there in our body. Suddenly they become active when our immunity is low. What are the conditions you get opportunistic infection in ER?
In any immunocompromised stage, if the patients are diabetic, then or if the patients are taking some
chemotherapy patients, they come with opportunity. So you take an HIV patient, if you understand what is the problem in HIV, same problem can occur in patient who is developing all this infection in chemotherapy also. Diabetic at a stage, last stage, they also present with same feature. So learning HIV is like learning all these conditions where all you get low immunity, you can get in HIV also.
So MRI brain was taken, sir. It was showing some exudates in the interpedunculair fossa and the left side the CP angle. Then the and there was some arachnoiditis features also, and some intradural and intradural lesions in the C7 D1 areas.
Okay. Arachnoiditis is a feature of what? Which is a common cause for arachnoiditis in our country. TB is one of the common. TB, fungus, syphilis, all these things can produce arachnoiditis.
So we were planning to do a lumbar puncture for this patient, sir. So we have to, along with TB, we had to rule out other infections also, like a Cryptococcus, Toxoplasma and all.
So when you do LP, so you have done an MRI. What are the precautions you take in an LP in any patient, not only this patient?
Personal protective equipment is necessary, sir. Double gloves should be there. Then face shield and something to cover the eyes. Then head cap, shoe cover should be there, and we should wear a sterile gown. So then we will have to explain the procedure to the patient, and we will have to get the consent for that. Then we will have to proceed also. Or whoever is helping the person who is doing the procedure also should be in personal protective equipment.
Okay. Then what are the investigation you ask in this type of patients? Here, is there any raised ICP?
Raised ICP features, neck stiffness is there, sir.
Neck stiffness is not a feature of raised ICP. It's a feature of meningitis. Is there a raised ICP in MRI?
MRI is
brain edema, midline shifting, corning, nothing is there. So you can go ahead with a normal LP needle without even guarded this one procedure. You can do it. Okay, so however, most of the doctors measure the pressure in the this one. That doesn't give very good clinical clue when you are doing this type of things. It mainly done for neurological cases like normal pressure hydrocephalus or hydrocephalus. That conditions, they are very helpful. But in ER, it may not be very helpful. However, you are done it and you can proceed. What are the investigation you will ask?
We will be doing the routine investigation like total count we will be doing, then the proteins, then sugars, then we will be doing the other tests, culture and sensitivity, gram stain will be done, AFB will be done, then fungal and bacterial culture should be done, then ingening should be done to check for Cryptococcus and the Toxoplasma.
Antigen also you can do.
Then Toxoplasma
IgM can be done.
And then we can do an ADA, but it is not very specific for TB in CSF.
ADA is not a good investigation in CSF. It is a good investigation in pleural fluid, not in CSF. It does not have any value in CSF diagnosis. So if not required, don't do it. Okay.
Then cytology also if we are suspecting a malignancy.
Okay. So what was the LP finding in this patient?
This patient's glucose was 32.1.
That means it is low. It can be?
It can be between 50 to 70% of the
So if glucose is low, what it can be?
So it can be a bacterial infection.
So it can be bacterial. Virus is mostly ruled out. It can be bacterial or fungus because they utilize the sugar than virus. Okay,
then protein was 1710.
That means it is elevated. It indicates what?
It can be a bacterial or
it indicates an inflammation. That's all. Elevated protein indicates an inflammation. Whether it is TB, whether it is some other autoimmune disease, anything. Inflammation indicates elevated protein. Okay,
then total count was 150 with 98% of mononuclear cells.
The lymphocytes are predominant and it is in the ranges of hundreds. That cells are in hundreds, it is elevated and it is lymphocytes. So lymphocyte predominance, where all you get?
Mostly, neutrophil predominant means it can be bacterial. So lymphocyte predominant can be in viral or in tubercular.
Viral, TB, fungus. Okay. Then anything else is positive?
Then we will send for the other cryptococcal, ingening, AFB, everything became negative.
So all are negative. This patient is already having tuberculosis, but he is on inappropriate treatment because of his side effects. So we have only 2 drugs which are not penetrating to the meninges. So it can be TB only. Okay, what else you want to do in this patient?
Then we will have to Cervical spine.
What else means? Any other treatment? TB will discuss in detail. Any other treatment you want to give in ICU? This patient is admitted in ICU. You have made a possible diagnosis of tuberculosis because this patient is already having TB in somewhere else in the body, and he has got meningitis now. It is possibly TB. Any supportive therapy you should give in your ICU.
Steroids should be given.
Steroids should be considered. Where all is considered steroids in TB?
Steroids should be given in case of TB meningitis.
Okay,
It should be there. Then TB adrenalitis should
then
be given.
Eyes, TB of eyes, genital organs. These are the important areas we should initiate steroid. So here also you can initiate steroid. What steroid you give?
Dexamethasone can be given.
So dexamethasone is one drug which penetrates the blood-brain barrier. So that can be given. Anything else you want to give in ICU? ICU is your area. You should take care of that. TB will discuss.
Universal precaution should be taken. Then thromboprophylaxis.
Thromboprophylaxis should be given for all patients. Any contraindication for thromboprophylaxis in this patient?
No, sir. After doing the lumbar puncture, there is no contraindication.
So we can start heparin or low molecular weight heparin in this patient. Stockings can be given. Then physiotherapy can be started. The patient is mobile, means he is able to walk.
Yes.
Okay. After LP, you want to take any precautions?
After LP, we to avoid post LP headache and all, we will ask the patient to lie flat for next 24 hours.
Suppose there is pain, what you do?
We can give analgesics and hydration.
Hydration is most important to prevent post LP headache. Okay, that should be given. Otherwise, there is no much treatment is required. Okay, we'll go to TB management now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so can you explain how to manage TB in HIV?
One thing is when we have a TB with HIV, both the conditions per se are very severe conditions, and the mortality rates are also more when we have a concurrent infection with the TB and HIV. So we need to do a quick investigation, find it out quickly, and we need to start treatment quickly. So regarding ATT and anti-tubercular drugs and antiretroviral treatment, the first thing is when a patient is already on an ART and you need to start him on an ATT, and second thing is when a patient is on an AT and you need to start an ART. Suppose we have a patient like this, the first thing when we need to start ATT, ART, we need to start the ATT first thing. First we need to start the ATT, then generally within 8 weeks time.
What you should understand is whatever may be the opportunistic infection, whether it is TB, PCP, that should be treated first. Because what we should understand is HIV will never kill a person. HIV can produce low immunity and the infection will kill you. Okay, so infection, whatever it may be, should be treated first. Okay, once the patient is ready to take ART, we can start ART. Because ART is a long-term plan, not a short-term drug. In 2 days it will not act. It will take some time. Okay, so you have to start ATT.
ATT. So we need to monitor the CD4 counts. If it is less than 50, we need to see that we started the antiretroviral treatment quickly. That is, within 2 weeks we start the antiretroviral treatment. If it is more than 50, we can give it within 8 weeks, like that we can start the antiretroviral therapy. So when we are starting the antiretroviral therapy, we need to be careful because there are multiple amount of drug interactions which will come into place, because when we are giving rifampicin or any of the rifampin, they are inducers, and whereas these are substrates of cytochrome P40. So we need to be careful when we are giving, so that the drug interactions need to be.
The main thing is rifampicin and drugs like efavirenz. Okay, so previously there was some dose restriction for efavirenz. You have to increase the dose. Nowadays it is not required. Previously it was told that when you are starting efavirenz, you have to go for rifabutin. That is not required. So you can go for the same dose. But the newer drug, that dolutegravir, is now little problem. Okay, when you are starting dolutegravir along with rifampicin, what should be done? The dose of dolutegravir should be higher. Okay, that is the main difference. From 50 it will become 100. That's all. Okay.
So this drug interactions we need to see, and generally we need to give is 2 NRTIs with 1 NRTI or a protease inhibitor or an integrase inhibitor.
Okay.
But one thing is, when we give, we need to be very sure about the interactions. So we have a rifamycin and rifabutin guided therapy. So efavirenz we should give with rifamycin, and with others we need to give rifabutin because their cytochrome P induction is lesser than a rifamycin. So
these are ideal situations, like you start rifabutin, rifamycin along with efavirenz, but nowadays it is gone. Because we first of all, we don't have rifabutin, it is very rarely available. So we can go with the same drug. It is now it is removed, that guidelines it is removed, that you can straight away go for rifampicin, what we are using. Same dose we can start. Efavirenz can be continued in same dose. Only dolutegravir has got a major interaction now. That dose should be doubled. Okay.
That is one thing. Then when we are giving the protease inhibitors also, they are more prone for this interaction. So we need to be careful about that. And when we are coming to a TB with meningitis, when we give a Dexa, we should give like 0.4 mg per kg for 2 weeks, then 0.2 mg for 1 week, then 1. Then slowly in a tapered dose over 8 weeks we need to give Dexa slowly, because mainly here it's a meningeal irritation and the production of the protein. As we can see in this patient, the total protein is around 1700, which is a very high value. And when we have a high value in the CSF, there is high chance that the protein can accumulate and we have a hydrocephalus. So in early initiation of dexamethasone is also a very key thing in a tubercular.
So if the patient suddenly deteriorates during your treatment, we have started ATT, he was on ART, we even started Dexona. Sudden deterioration, what is the first thing you should suspect?
Hydrocephalus.
Hydrocephalus is the first thing we should suspect. Repeat CT is required in this patient if the patient deteriorates. Okay.
Hydrocephalus. Then when we are giving this, we need to be also sure about the other opportunistic.
Okay. Now we will go for TB treatment in a patient who is having meningitis. So you know that this patient is already on tenofovir, emtricitabine and dolutegravir. That is a standard regimen to be started in any patient. No need to think about multiple regime. This is the most preferred standard regime in any patient. Okay, there is no major interaction. Only if there is rifampicin, you double the dose of dolutegravir. Otherwise, there is no issue. In ICU, we have already told that it can produce lactic acidosis. That should be taken care. Okay. Now, how do you go ahead with your anti-tubercular treatment in a patient who is admitted in ICU with meningitis? What are the drugs which have got maximum penetration to the brain? Inflamed meninges. See, encephalitis is a different part, meningitis is a different infection. Encephalitis, most of the drugs may act, but inflamed meninges, which all drugs?
Generally, meninges, ceftriaxone.
So first of all, you should know, so that is different. Okay. First of all, you should know what are the ATTs you should start. What are the ATTs you start?
Generally, in intensive phase, we go with the HRZD.
HRZD is INH, rifampicin, ethambutol, pyrazinamide. In that, rifampicin is required for all short-term TB regimes. Why it is like that?
One thing is it acts in the intranuclear level. So
okay. So what is the importance of rifampicin? Rifampicin is the only drug which acts against slow growers and rapid growers. The problem is slow growers. So if we don't use rifampicin, the slow growers will not be treated. So after you complete it 6 months with other drugs, the slow growers will act or they come up. So if rifampicin is not there, you have to continue the treatment for 18 months. Okay. So if rifampicin is there, wherever is the treatment, whether it is in the brain, lungs, spine, all are short course regimes, it is only 6 months. So if rifampicin is not there, you should think about slow growers and continue it for 18 months. Okay. So rifampicin, but unfortunately it will not act in the inflamed meninges. The action is minimal. Okay. What are the important drugs which can act in the brain?
Levofloxacin is a drug, then pyrazinamide.
No. Pyrazinamide acts better. Then INH acts better. Then streptomycin. These are the 3 drugs has got maximum penetration to the brain. So how do you treat this patient? She has explained the patient. So she has come with brain infection with TB. We have already started on ART and ATT, but unfortunately ATT in suboptimal dosage or suboptimal drugs. So what drugs you select for him?
So one thing, because he's having a penetration, so we need to give something which is more penetrating. So we can start with a streptomycin.
So you start with streptomycin. What is the dose of streptomycin?
We can give 800
No, dose per kg body weight. 25 milligram per kg body weight 15 milligram per kg body weight streptomycin should be started. What are the side effects of streptomycin?
It has a ototoxicity.
So that is main thing, ototoxicity. You have to take before and after starting streptomycin, you have to check the ER. Okay, so streptomycin 15 milligram per kg body weight. Once daily IM can be started.
Then after that we can go with
INH. INH, what is the dose?
5 mg per
5 mg per kg body weight. You can go up to 10 milligram. In brain, you can go up to 10 milligram. So 5 to 10 milligram per kg body weight, you can start. Any side effects for them?
Because this patient already has a hepatitis.
So hepatitis can be aggravated in this patient. So we should be very careful. So INH can be started. Then
pyrazinamide.
Pyrazinamide, what is the dose? 25 milligram per kg. That also can produce some amount of hepatitis. So you should be very careful. We discuss about hepatitis afterwards. Okay. So these are the 3 drugs must be started for this patient. And you can start 4th drug. What is 4th drug? Rifampicin was avoided because he is having hepatic problem because of rifampicin. That's why it was avoided. So what will be the 4th drug?
We can go with
Ethambutol is not a good drug when you have a problem like this. It's not that powerful. Okay, you can start ethambutol, but better to go for a drug like levofloxacin can be started. Okay, so 4 drugs we are giving, but you have to tell the bystander or patient that you may have to take the drug for how many months? 18 months. Okay, at least 2 drugs should be continued for 18 months because we are not able to give rifampicin. Okay, now what happened is this patient had liver disease because of actual ATT. He was taking INH, rifampicin, ethambutol and pyrazinamide. If the patient develops liver disease or liver injury after starting ATT, how do you manage it?
The first thing we need to see is it's a ATT induced transaminitis, that is they are more than the 5 times of the regular ASGLT.
Okay.
That is one thing. So we need to immediately stop the ATT.
So more than 3 times with symptoms like vomiting, abdominal pain, stop it. Or more than 5 times without symptoms, stop it. Stop all the drugs. All ATT should be stopped. Then what do you do?
Then we should give a hepatic protective measures.
Then you should check for other reasons for hepatitis. Like we can ask for hepatitis B, hepatitis A, hepatitis C, hepatitis C. That investigation should be done. Then you can restart the medicine. How do you restart a medicine when there is an adverse effect during the treatment?
So one thing is we need to restart it in a slow 1 by 1 order.
Okay. So how do you restart in this condition? This patient was taking ATT full dose. For after some days he developed hepatitis. They stopped all the drugs and patient came to AIIMS. And how do you restart it?
So initially first we can start as the isoniazid or a rifampicin.
No, you have to start ethambutol because ethambutol has got a least hepatic damage. Okay, he had a lymph node here. First one was he had a lymph node here. So we have to start ethambutol. Can we start full dose?
No sir, we need to go.
We can start full dose of ethambutol in this patient because ethambutol will not produce hepatitis. So you start ethambutol full dose. What will be the second drug?
Second we can start
So all pyrazinamide, INH, rifampicin will produce liver damage. So you need a faster cover. Okay, especially this patient is HIV. So ethambutol was started. What is the second drug which will not have any liver damage? Streptomycin. You start streptomycin. So first is ethambutol, second is streptomycin. What can be the third drug which comes in second line therapy? Levofloxacin. So 3 drugs you start. You start first one ethambutol, streptomycin, levofloxacin. That will cover the patient because we need a faster cover for this patient. Suppose this patient is a good immune patient, we avoid levofloxacin because patient is already having good immunity. This patient does not have good immunity, so we have to give a faster cover. So we may have to go for second line drug like levofloxacin. Then other 3 drugs, which one will you start first?
We can start rifampicin is most toxic.
Rifampicin is most toxic. Then is pyrazinamide. Then is INH. So INH is the least toxic among these 3 drugs. So you can go for INH first. How do you start INH?
5 mg per kg body weight.
5 mg per kg body weight is the dose of that drug. So when you restart, you start only 25% of the drug. So 5 mg means you start 1.5 mg per kg body weight initially. First 3 days you continue the drug, then do the LFT, then make it 50% of the dose. Then 3 days you do the LFT, then 75% of the dose, then 100% of the dose, but while monitoring the LFT. Okay, so INH is restarted. There is no problem. What is the next drug you can start?
Then we
Pyrazinamide. So pyrazinamide is same like that, 25%, 50%, 75%, 100%. But rifampicin, this patient was started finally on rifampicin and he developed liver damage. Okay, so rifampicin cannot be given in this patient. So what you will tell to the patient?
We need a prolonged
So you need
treatment.
whatever drug you give, he requires a prolonged treatment. Okay, so that is a problem in this patient. This patient require 18 months. So first 1 month, 2 months you give for drug regime. Then you can see where is the lesion and you can avoid some of the drugs. Like if it is in the brain, like this patient, he has got CNS problem. So you have to give all the drugs which has got a good penetration to brain. You can give INH, you can give pyrazinamide, you have to give streptomycin. All 3 drugs should be continued till this patient improves. Okay. Then once the patient is stabilized, you can start. You can continue the ART if already on ART. Then if the patient is not on ART, once the patient is clinically stabilized, you can start ART. Then what are the side effects you monitored during ethambutol? Sorry, this patient is on INH, pyrazinamide, streptomycin. What are the things, side effects you monitor?
So one is streptomycin, the autotoxicity. We need to regularly do the testing due to audiometry and all. Then ear examination to see like otitis media. This patient previously he had
some problem there, but unfortunately now he is not having that problem, so we are able to continue it.
Okay. Then for isoniazid, when you are having, we need to regularly monitor the transaminitis. LFTs should be done on a regular basis and all. Then when you give pyrazinamide, that also the transaminitis we need to monitor. And
anything else you want to add? You want to add in this patient?
Ethambutol
Vision should be checked. Okay, that should be sent to ophthalmology and check. Rather than we assume that there is no side effect, it's always better because this patient require a longer term ATT. So we should send to ophthalmology and rule out the drug related problem and HIV related problem in this patient. How is the patient now?
The patient is better, sir. After starting a pyrazinamide and increasing the dose, he was okay. LFTs were monitors, it was okay.
Okay, so we could able to continue only 3 important drugs. That is pyrazinamide, streptomycin and INH. We are not able to continue rifampicin. Okay, so that is a problem here. So what will be the dose of dolutegravir here?
100.
We are not giving rifampicin, so we can give same dose. So 50 milligram only enough. That is one advantage. The disadvantage is long dose. Okay. So when will you check the CD4 count in this patient?
Generally, if the CD4 come above 200, we can check it on a yearly basis.
Okay. If CD4 increases by 100 every year, decreases by 100 every year. So every year you can check the CD4 count. What other investigation you do to know whether the patient is improving in HIV status?
Viral load.
Viral load should be. What is the target viral load?
Viral load above 200.
Viral load increases when you have infection, decreases when you don't have infection. So by 3 months of ART, it should be undetectable range. Some book says it is by 3 weeks. Okay, so at least by 1 or 2 months, it should be in undetectable state. Okay, so when you are asking for a viral load, they'll report it as less than 20, less than 30, less than 20 or less than 30 depending on the labs. If it is less than 20, it is undetectable. Okay, but the problem is when you are asking for a diagnosis, previously we had discussed the HIV RNA PCR qualitative. In that patient also it will be reported as less than 20. Okay, so never ask a HIV RNA PCR quantitative in a patient whom you are going to diagnose. Okay, only in a patient who are diagnosed you should ask for HIV RNA PCR quantitative. So there is a slight difference in qualitative and quantitative. Okay, that's all you should know. Okay, thank you.